faster now, and I think I'm better at it. So, like, you're probably right. It's just still
like now that the late swap process has been, I don't want to say solved, but like pseudo solved. It's really not that laborious to make the updates.
Yeah, you just
whereas before it was like I got to move these, like I have 100 crunches, and I'm like,
right. It used to take me like if we got news at 7:01, I needed until 7:30 to like get everything re-updated. Now it's just like I can sit on the couch until 10 minutes before the next game starts and then go into my office and do it.
Yeah, that I think is incredibly helpful. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. Adam and I just chopping it up to get this one started. It is Wednesday, November 1st, hump day, no nut November. Tough one here, tough one, but we're going to make our way through it. Shout out to Bet365 for being the sponsor of this video. Shout out to none of the games last night. Just truly dreadful. Although shouts to the Spurs, I guess, for picking up a win in a game where they had no business picking up a win. I was shocked to see that the Spurs won that game. I thought that I was dreaming when I opened up my phone and looked at the score because they weren't really close to winning that game at halftime, and they didn't strike me as the type of team that were going to run that one down, yet it happened anyway. If you haven't done it yet, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. I am Josh Engleman. Follow me at Josh Engleman. That is Adam Scherer. Follow him at ShipMyMoneyDFS on Twitter because we don't say X around these parts. Adam, what's up?
Yeah, glad that we have more than 3 games tonight. Glad that we don't have those same 3 games because that was miserable.
We got one of the same.
Well, yeah, true. The nice thing for me was I didn't really have to pay any attention to anything that was happening because Dean Wade did end up being my highest owned player, and he finished with like 4 DraftKings points. So I kind of just got the night off from NBA.
I, on the other hand, was under the field on Dean Wade, under the field on Donovan Mitchell, and had a decent enough chunk of Isaiah Hartenstein after the first game that I was like, I think that I'm going to be in play. Nope. Winning lineup didn't have Durant or Donovan Mitchell in it.
Just weird slate.
Dumb.
I'm just never going to get lineups like that probably.
No,
I didn't go back and look, but I assume every lineup I built or every lineup I played rather had at least one of them.
Oh yeah, I mean I had 80 of Durant and like 30 something of Mitchell, so it's going to be the amount that didn't have either one of them is by default very tiny.
Did it have Randall, the winning lineup?
I honestly
because if it didn't have Randall, then there's no way I was getting there.
Let me look. I should be able to get there pretty quick. Chad will probably say it before I get there, but I can get the lineup study quite quick. All right, winning lineup last night. I know Russ had the day that we had opined that he would. Russ, Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Wemby, Nurkic, Bones, Grayson Allen, Zach Collins. 4-man Spurs stack, which I'm almost positive I said was going to happen on the show.
We did kind of mention, I know we alluded to it just in the sense that like if they won that game and scored a lot of points, the points are coming from like 3-4 guys.
Those were the guys: Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Victor Wembanyama, Zach Collins.
Just no Trey Jones. But
yeah,
I ended up not having a lot of him anyway.
Yeah, Russ went for 46 at 13% ownership. It was just, I mean, it was gross. It was just, there's no other way to describe it. Highest scorer on the slate was Paul George. He was 18% owned. Russ was second at 46. Keldon Johnson was third, and Yusuf Nurkic was fourth. What kind of odds would you have gotten on something like that, where Kevin Durant was the 5th highest scorer and Donovan Mitchell was 6th?
Yeah, I mean, obviously was not very likely to happen.
No, I'm not going to win on those slates. I'm just not.
Yeah, it kind of, and it goes back. I mean, it's even when things are seemingly obvious, there's still just so much volatility in any DFS sport, even though, NBA, there's less than some others. But I think it's important to keep in mind too, like, you don't want to necessarily, for people that are, reviewing lineups and stuff like that, kind of like we're talking about right now, you don't want to change your strategy to like fit a specific slate. Like, you don't want to be looking at yesterday and going like, well, I couldn't have won because I played all of my lineups had at least one of Mitchell or Durant, or Randall. So I couldn't have won. So I need to be playing more contrarian and like, weighting projections less or something like that. There's just going to be slates that you're not going to win no matter what your process is. So, I think it's important to try and, always try and improve, but also make sure you're not just like retroactively fitting what you do to win some random slate that you're not going to get again.
Yeah, that was a gem. But you're absolutely right, though. Sometimes you don't, like, not every slate result is something that you should be like changing everything you do for.
Right.
Last night is one of them for me.
There's a tendency because like it's very easy to look and be like, yeah, obviously Kevin Durant and Donovan Mitchell projected really well, but everybody knew that Paul George can beat them. It did beat them. Like, why wasn't I just playing a bunch of like the 15 to 20% owned really good players? And the answer is because they still projected like 5 to 10 points below the other guys. So it's still, factoring in that they were low owned, they still didn't come out as good of a play. So I think there is that tendency. I know for me, like it's less so now because you can use, post contest sims. You can do a lot of stuff now that quantifies, you were still fine. It just didn't work out. But I know like in the past, it would be very easy for me to be like, well, maybe I shouldn't have just jammed the 60% owned stars and I should have played the 15% owned guys. Like, what do I need to adjust?
For sure. Max Strus, 60% owned last night, 2.5x, 14.75 fantasy points.
Yeah. He
was 2 of 9 from the field. Not quite. 57% owned Donovan Mitchell, 4x. Bones got there, ultimately getting the start. Durant, 41% owned, 3.9x. Dean Wade, 33% owned, 4.75 fantasy points.
Yeah, I love how the slate just went like exactly like you kind of figured it would too right out of the gate. Like at least for me, like Dean Wade, like I said, was my highest owned guy. I had like 50% Strus. You and I were DMing that like we just hated how much Max Strus we had at his ownership, but he was just still showing up. And so like going in, you're just like, yeah, okay, obviously Dean Wade and Max Strus are going to kill me. Hopefully I'm wrong. And then it's like halftime and you have 2 rebounds for Dean Wade and like 7 points for Strus.
I had 42% of 60% owned Strus, 38% of 57% owned Donovan Mitchell. I thought I was sitting on gold heading to the 10 o'clock games. And I turned that gold directly into shit.
With more games are easier. I don't think easier is the right word. I think not having to play massive amounts of Dean Wade or Max Strus or whoever else is nice. Like you're going to find better plays. Easier probably isn't the right word. It's all relative. And Christopher Falter said, I pulled Wade. The guy's a bum. You're going to have a long season if you're just refusing to play guys that aren't very good.
Yeah, not playing Dean Wade yesterday is a gigantic mistake, I would imagine. Again, but let me say this again because I said it before. You can pull Dean Wade and make 150 positive ROI lineups before lock. It's going to be a lot harder on a 3-game slate, but you can do that. It's not necessarily wrong. You're like taking bullets out of the gun for no reason.
Right. The way that I think about it, and I don't remember, I know I've talked about it before. I think more so in baseball, but like, it's fine to say like, I'm not playing Dean Wade. There's a reason he was 33% owned, and it's because he was one of the best sub 4K plays you had. So if you're going to be like, oh, I'm not playing Dean Wade because he's not good, what you either need to be saying, I'm also not playing Kevin Durant, or you need to be saying what $3,500 guys are good that you're playing instead of Dean Wade because they don't exist. But like that price point is still useful.
It's a fun start to the show. Sometimes you got to hit on some of these things. If you're not watching the process, 1, what are you guys thinking? But 2, I break down the 150 maxers at the beginning of the process in terms of post-contest ROI. So if you guys want to see that, tune in Monday through Friday. You ready to get started?
Sort of.
And when Seymour Cake asked that question about do we think slates with more games are easier, I think they're going to be moving forward. Easier relative to the people you're playing, at least for this year. Because of our new late swap tools, that's going to make this process easier. And I think the more games you have, the more likely everybody else is more. You're giving other people way more opportunities to screw up.
Right. So like they're easier in the sense it's the more games there are, the more mistakes, the more decisions there are to make, the more mistakes worse players are going to make. That's why, it's like short slates are annoying and there's a lot of volatility there because no matter how bad you are, as long as you're like competent enough to know who's playing, you're going to land on the best plays because you don't have alternatives. Whereas, if you have 10, 11, 12, 13 games, there's more decision points. It's easier to make those mistakes. And to your point, I don't know if it'll even last the entire season. It might just last like half the season. But late swap has always been a big edge in NBA, doing it well. You and I were talking before the show. It's something that I actually don't think I've ever really done particularly well, but I still would do it with, somewhat competently, which was good. Now that you have access to be able to do it in the best way that most people have had access to, obviously some people have had already built very good ways to do it. But now that you have access to that, there's going to be at least some overlap period where a good percentage of the field still isn't using those tools that are making your life really easy. Probably after this year, or maybe, all-star break, you're going to get enough casual players out of the pool where it's like, okay, now everybody's just using good late swap stuff. But for right now, I think that will make those slates more profitable too.
Bug boy, we got to get away from the thought process that there's awful chalk. That's basically not a thing, especially in the NBA. Basically not a thing. You can end up on either side of it. Individual ownership is very, very unimportant.
Well, and he still didn't answer the part of the question that nobody can ever answer when they have this conversation. Yeah, Dean Wade's low usage, whatever. What guys from the Suns backcourt were $3,600 and not low usage? What guys on the Clippers were sub 4K and not low usage? That's the part that you need.
Well, it wasn't Amir Coffee.
It was not Amir Coffee.
10 minutes, by the way. In case you went back and looked.
I did look at that when I woke up this morning. I don't remember. I don't think I ended up with that much of him once I swapped to a bunch of bones.
Yeah, you did. You definitely ended up with a lot less. I think you had like 15 or so. Just trying to remember that graphic. All right, let's get into this. Some of these games we aren't going to talk about. Like full stop, start to finish. Tune into the deeper dive for those. But Portland Trailblazers, 4-point dogs in Detroit, 214 total. This game, per dunks and threes, is a matchup between the number 27 net rating at negative 4.5 and the number 28 net rating at negative 4.9. And it's the second lowest total on today's slate. Real fun one to watch at 7 o'clock. The problem lies in that Shaedon Sharpe is 6K, shooting guard, small forward, 31% owned at this current time on DraftKings. That is the high mark of anybody on today's slate. I think Shaedon Sharpe looks great. Probably one of the better plays point per dollar that you can get to. I don't know if I need him in a third of my lineups on a 13 gamer.
Yeah, I mean, that's a ton of ownership, and it's not like he's at 6K. So it's soft pricing. He's cheap. We have him projected for 6X. He's shooting guard, small forward, 28% chance of being optimal. All of that looks really good. At that price point, you are always going to have plenty of alternatives where on a player, on like an individual level, one player versus the next, you're going to be able to find an abundance of guys where you can just say like, he shouldn't be a 5, 6, 7 to 1 dog to shit on Sharpe. But that's also, again, not how you're actually building lineups. So he does look like a very good play. The ownership is, a little bit concerning. I did a crunch before the show. I'm looking right now to try and see. I don't have it sorted perfectly to be quick, but right now I would be getting, I don't have it sorted at all right now. Right now I would be getting about 46% Sharpe on DraftKings.
Yeah, like he's definitely one of the better plays. I think by the time we finish 13 games, we're going to name a lot of dudes that are like a half step away from Shaedon Sharpe at no ownership whatsoever.
Right. He's one of those plays, and there's going to be a lot on this slate probably where I don't think there's a right answer. If you want to say, okay, the 6K guy is somebody I'm just going to find a bunch of alternatives and throw, 10 to 15% at some low owned 6K guys instead, I think that's fine. If you're taking the approach that it looks like I would be if the slate started at 10:15 a.m. and you're getting over the field on a guy that has very good positional eligibility and a good price tag, also perfectly fine. If you wanted another argument against him, it's a 7 o'clock game, and the better you are at late swapping, the more you should value your late swapping ability.
That is what makes me very interested in this piece, just because, I mean, you're locking in one spot of your lineup in a third of the time that you have it. Like that's big. Brogdon's 9%. I don't really have anything else to say here for Portland. Like no one else stands out.
Agreed. I mean, the next highest owned guy is Brogdon at 9%. I think he's a perfect example of somebody that you can make the ownership case, him versus Sharpe getting 1/3 the ownership, but it's also not exactly apples to apples when Brogdon is point guard, shooting guard, and Sharpe is shooting guard, small forward. That small forward piece is just really valuable. Brogdon also projects about 5.5 points behind Sharpe for us. So he's getting 9%. Nobody else getting more than 5 from Portland.
On the Detroit side, we do have a piece of news that could create really interesting value today. Bojan Bogdanovic, Isaiah Livers, and Monty Morris are all still out. Jalen Duren is questionable. If Duren is out, we're going to get value in their front court in some way. As of right now, 8% owned Isaiah Stewart, $5,400 power forward center, is the high mark for the Pistons. This is a great game in that both of the teams are awful, but I think they're awful scoring and playing defense. So it's a really interesting dynamic. Do you want to get to anything for the Pistons, assuming Duren is in?
Assuming he's in, I don't think there's anything that really stands out. I mean, Isaiah Stewart, 7% owned at 5,400. We really liked him in his last game. Obviously, it was a different slate. He was really popular there. But the reasons we liked him are still there. He's still cheap. He's still power forward eligible. Perfectly fine contrarian play. Same goes for like a $4,500 Killian Hayes at 7%. But I don't think there's anything from Detroit that stands out as any sort of priority.
If we don't have Jalen Duren, I'm assuming we just get like Bagley playing Duren-ish minutes and then Wiseman becoming Bagley, something in that area.
Probably.
Bagley, power forward center, 4K. I think he by default is going to become a really nice point per dollar play if Duren is out.
Yeah, obviously if he's coming off the bench, it's riskier. But it's like if he starts, you're talking about one of the better values you're going to find. If they were to move like Burks into the starting lineup and Stewart to the 5, then you're taking on more risk, but he is still 4K.
And at that point in time, I think we're definitely going to like Isaiah Stewart even more.
Yeah. If Stewart's not playing alongside Duren, you have to like it more.
Yeah.
Like there's just
James Wiseman is the flat 3K.
There's just not a black hole of rebounds if Duren's gone.
I could also see them just immediately, like if Duren's out, they start Wiseman.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw this last year too, where they would just, go from DNP to starting, whichever of them, we're talking about. So yeah, you could very easily see them just kind of leave Bagley in his role and Wiseman start. If Duren is out, whoever is starting at the 5 looks better than they do right now. If it's Bagley or Wiseman, they obviously look like massively better than they do right now. If it's Stewart, he looks marginally better.
Hopefully we get a little bit of this information for the deeper dive, but this game starts at 7, so we'll know it by 6:30. Anything else for the Pistons? Somebody asked about Cunningham. I have no interest. Other than just like, I don't care if he's in my lineup.
Right, yeah. There's going to be a bunch of guys on this slate. Cunningham's one of them where like, if you're playing 50, 100, 150 lineups and you happen to look at one and it has Cade Cunningham, like, yeah, cool. He's 1% owned and he's capable of breaking a slate, but he's just not somebody that should really be a focal point of anything you're doing.
The Milwaukee Bucks are 5-point favorites in Toronto, 224 total. Marchand Beauchamp is probable. No other interesting injury news on the Milwaukee side. Precious Achiuwa is doubtful on the Toronto end, which we saw in the last game. 1% ownership coming into an 11K Giannis, none to anybody else. If I were going anywhere here, it would probably be Dame before Giannis, but I don't want to say I don't like Giannis. I don't really like Giannis.
The price tags are just so tough. I mean, you're probably getting like 32 minutes or so from Giannis at 11K on a 13-game slate. There's just going to be so many other guys you can get to. Dame probably giving you 34, 35 minutes, but 9,700 and playing with Giannis. I mean, it's really tough. These guys obviously still have the ability to just be the highest scorer on the slate. They both have that ability where you look back and you just go, their price tag was completely irrelevant. You needed these guys. Dame knocks down 10 threes. Giannis just goes for 40, 20, and 20 or something. Like, they can still do that, but it's just not likely. And you're not playing enough lineups that you're really going to be getting to them all that much. I mean, we have a 50.5 DraftKings point projection on Giannis right now.
Yeah.
That is 10 points behind Luka and Jokic. It's behind Davis. It's behind SGA. It's even with Tatum. And then you also have to keep in mind that you're just going to have all of these cheaper guys that aren't that far behind and have 50 plus in their range of outcomes, whether, it's Trae Young, he's questionable, but, whether it's Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, there's just no shortage of guys that can go score 50 plus fantasy points.
I have him at 48.5.
Yeah.
And I loaded that and then cross-checked his points, rebounds, assists, props. I feel a little bit better about props for someone like Giannis, where that market is established. I was spot on it. He's just not projecting that way with Dame there.
I'm enjoying Bug Boy still pretending like he knows what he's talking about when like every pro played it the way that we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. I hate Bug Boy. You didn't get to experience my back and forth with Bug Boy through baseball.
So I've never seen the name before.
So he came in. He's a nice guy. I don't. He's like in the Sean V mold, not like the Brandon Katz mold.
Gotcha.
Um, Evan Carter gets called up for the Rangers, and he's talking about playing him in cash, and he's hitting ninth in the opener at like a non-minimum salary. I was like, this is a terrible play. And then Evan Carter proceeded to every single day just go nuts.
Yeah,
and he was just in the strategy show just talking his shit every single morning, man. I couldn't get that dude right to save my life. And then
what do you mean you couldn't get him right? Just play him every day. He's like the best player in baseball already.
So we finally get to a point where I've got a lineup that's real, that wins. The only guy that bageled in the lineup was Evan Carter. So like the one time that I finally got him into a lineup, he crushed me. It was minimum salary, but he was hitting ninth. No chance that he's ever going to be the cash play in that situation on a full MLB
I mean, he
slate.
could be, but I have no idea what the slate was.
Oh, there were other min price dudes hitting in like, normal spots in the order.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough for me because he was just donging every day. Bug Boy's tagging me in the tweet the moment it happens. It was a lot. He brought that on, and I brought that on to myself. Toronto. Like I said, no Precious. We did see a little bit of a bump up in the minutes for Jakob Poeltl. 9% ownership coming into 6K Dennis Schroeder, 7 to Scotty Barnes. Once again, like there are no priorities to me from Toronto. Any starter is viable to have in a lineup.
Yeah, agreed. They're all fine. Like Scotty Barnes and Siakam have been playing the most minutes out of the starters. They're also the most expensive starters. Barnes getting around 7% ownership, 7% chance of being optimal. Does have that guard forward eligibility, which is really nice. And like you and I were talking about the other day too, players like Barnes are always nice too because they're good at everything. They contribute in every category. So it's not that you necessarily need him to go score 40 actual points. He can, but it's like you can get big games where it's just like, oh, he triple doubled because he's good at everything. So nice to get to him, but he is priced up a little bit. Schroeder should give you like 32 to 34 minutes. Anunoby probably giving you around 32 or so. He's pretty inexpensive. So I think any of those guys are fine. Siakam, the most difficult to get to, I think, just because of the salary. Poeltl is still interesting to me at 5,700, just because we did see that increase in playing time last game without Achua. It's still, I think, something to be relatively cautious with. Like, I think 26 minutes or so is a very fair projection because they can close small. Like you can go Gary Trent in place of Poeltl. There's no guarantee that you're getting 48 minutes from Poeltl plus Boucher, but 5,700 for Poeltl, assuming he's probably playing around 26 minutes or so, looks fine at 3% owned. And I want to
close with Gary Trent. I think you meant to say Grady Dick. 21 minutes last game, came on at the same time as Gary Trent and played more than him.
Yeah, he played a lot last game too.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention Grady Dick. I know what you mean.
Yeah. My point being, they do not need either of Jakob Poeltl or Chris Boucher on the floor at the end of the game.
They sure don't.
And I wanted to just touch on it in chat because it's probably worth it for this show. Somebody said they were surprised we didn't mention Thompson from Detroit. He's fine. He's a mid-range guy getting 5% ownership. There's going to be 40 of those guys on this slate. Like, there's nothing really to say there.
No, we're gonna not talk about a lot more dudes than just Ausar Thompson.
Like, he doesn't look underpriced. He's not overpriced. He's just sort of sitting there.
Yep. I don't have anything else for Toronto.
Me neither.
This should be a barn burner. And I mean that literally, 238 total. This is the high mark on the day. We have the Atlanta Hawks. They are hosting Adams Wizards. The Hawks currently number 3. Huh?
I said, don't associate me with that shit.
It's your team, man. Number 3 offense for Atlanta. Washington is unsurprisingly the worst team in the league. As we look at the Wizards side of this one, we still have a Q tag on Daniel Gafford. Otherwise, everybody is available. Kyle Kuzma 7% owned. Gafford is 6 if he's in. again, I don't mind Kuzma at all at 7,500, 1.26 DraftKings points per minute so far this season. He's like a guy that you should probably have about 10% of, but there are no priorities coming from the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, I don't see anything from Washington showing up as a priority. Like you said, Kuzma's fine. I have like 5% if the slate started right now. Obviously, that can change quite a bit. But yeah, highest owned guy on the team, Kuzma at 7%. Gafford, if he's in, at 6. Yeah, I mean, you know the ceiling, I guess, that Jordan Poole gives you if he ever actually makes shots. But so far, he's just been a meme every game, basically. At 7,900, the price tag's already adjusted for his opportunity, so tough to want to get there. Nothing that stands out to me from Washington. Kuzma would be the guy that I want to get to first.
48% true shooting for Jordan Poole on the season.
Better than Julius Randle.
22% from 3. Steal rate's up, though, a lot, so we'll see.
I don't know if I liked the missed 3 where he turned around and started talking to Memphis, or the whatever playground shit he pulled on Porzingis where Porzingis just swatted him.
It's bad. It's got to be wild to Poole just being like, I make $20 million a year. Like, I feel like I could do anything.
Yeah, he's getting paid $20 million to play at the Y, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably not the worst feeling in the world. As a 24-year-old dude, too.
Yeah.
He's like you after a GPP win right now.
That's a good comp.
She's like, what did Adam do? Okay. Well, I don't have anything else for your Wizards. We can finally get to a team that we should talk about. Now, this could get even crazier. Trae Young is questionable. Injured himself at a trampoline park. So we'll see if he's in for today. 21% ownership to Clint Capella, 28 to DeJounte Murray, 20 to Jalen Johnson, 20 to Onyeka Okongwu, 10 to Trae Young, 10 to Bogdanovich. Remember, highest total, worst team on the opposite side. Everything for Atlanta looks great, and it might even be more ridiculous if Trae Young sits.
Yeah, so I looked at the players that I'm getting to, if the slate started right now, and I just assumed that we had Trae Young projected out. DeJounte Murray is showing up as my highest owned guy. If the slate started right now, he would be in like 88% of my lineups. 7,300, we have him projected for 45 plus DraftKings points, 28% ownership, 36% chance of being optimal, point guard and shooting guard eligible. I don't really know what there is not to like about him.
I think he looks fantastic. I might not get to 80%. I think he looks great.
Right. So I was surprised I got that much, just given that there are plenty of alternatives in that price range. Normally it's just going to flatten out, and it probably will by the time we get to lock. But when I looked at it, I was just like, I guess we just already projected Young out. And then I looked, I was like, no, we just have $7,300 Murray facing Washington.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing here right now is I think the Wizards are going to be the equivalent of Coors this season.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's my take on Washington during the offseason was basically that Jordan Poole was going to be the most ridiculous 10K DFS player we've ever seen, just because of opportunity. And that Washington was just going to be, they were like this a couple of years ago when they had Westbrook, I think it was, because they would just play so fast.
Yeah.
But I mean, now they just don't have anybody that plays defense. And they're going to give up so much.
I like Trae at 8,900 if he's playing. That's a totally fine price tag for him in this spot.
Sure.
Jalen Johnson, 5,400, power forward only, 20% owned. He's playing, 30 minutes or more a night. I think he looks really good as a point per dollar option.
Yeah, price tag's nice. I'm not getting to a lot of him. I'm getting to, like I said, Murray, getting to some Capella, but still 5,400 for Johnson, perfectly fine. Last game remained in the starting lineup, played 33 minutes again. So, you like to see that. And then the other nice thing is he played 33 minutes. Saddiq Bey still played 25 off the bench. You'd be a lot more nervous about Jalen Johnson's playing time if you were getting Saddiq Bey only played 18 minutes today and Johnson played 33. But as long as Bey is getting his minutes off the bench, you should be fine with Jalen Johnson's minutes because it's essentially just him playing and AJ Griffin not really playing, which I'm not as concerned about.
How do we balance Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu? 5,700 for Capella, 20% owned. 3,900 for Okongwu, 20% owned. Minutes, shrug.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably just go like 25 Capella, 23 Okongwu, 26 Capella, 22 Okongwu. Like, I
Okay.
think you still probably should be giving the edge to Capella by like a minute or two, just because he's starting and can, you know, close if he's playing well. But there's no reason at this point. We've seen it last year. You've seen it so far this year. They paid him in the offseason. There's no reason to think that the Hawks view Capella as somebody that needs to be playing significantly more minutes than Okongwu.
It's great. Like for both of them to be getting 20% ownership, that is, you don't see that all that frequently on slates of this size.
I feel like I messed up my crunch earlier because like I'm not even getting to Okongwu, which I should be.
Yeah, I would expect you to, for sure. Well, like, yes and no. It doesn't take too many dudes that have comparable price tags that you just have like slightly better projected, and all of a sudden the backup center doesn't get there.
Yeah. I'm like weirdly condensed for a 13 game slate.
Gotcha. Did you include all 13 games?
As far as I know. Yeah.
Real question. It's a real question.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I guess like it's not that I dislike what I'm looking at. Like it could certainly just be the way things look right now, but just kind of surprised. Like with DeJounte Murray, surprised I'm getting 88% instead of like 50.
Right. Hard to not want to get to everything here from Atlanta. I would like to point out that Sadiq Bey is sneaky at 2% owned, but like that's just not the kind of conversation we can have today.
Right. It's just again, it's a 13 game slate. Like, could Sadiq Bey pay off his $4,500 price tag? Sure. If you're spending your time trying to find the 2% owned $4,500 bench guys that could pay off their price tag on this slate, you're probably throwing out some really shitty lineups.
Yes, you are. Yeah. Lock and load this entire team, man. They look fantastic. Thanks, Wiz. It's all because of you guys. Anything else for this one?
No. Really good spot for Atlanta.
Guys, I told you guys for the past couple of days, you needed to get in on the NBA Sims deal. Our promo code is now over. You do not get 20% off for the Sims any longer. It went away. But we're here to help you out a little bit more. Promo code NBA Treat, TREAT. Not going to let anybody know that Halloween is already over and this promo is starting after it, but we'll let that slide for right now. NBA Treat is the promo code. If you want to get our NBA lineup generator, $4.95 for your first week. This is the tool that's basically Sims Lite. We're handling all of the calculations on the back end. We're getting rid of all of the lineups that we don't think are all that valuable. We present the rest of them to you. You can lock players or swap players. You could choose chalky, contrarian, balanced lineup builds. A lineup's just going to pop up on the screen. Click save if you like it. Click discard if you don't. Either way, another one's just going to pop back up. You can export up to 20 via CSV. You'll see projections and optimal rates. You'll see chalky rates as well. Full spectrum of exposures once you save all of those lineups. This is the tool for the average player, the guy that's in playing a lineup or two, upwards of 20. This is the tool that you're looking for. You get to test it out for $5. This is how we want to get you in the door. Come in, check out the lineup generator, make better lineups, and then ultimately pick up a dub in some contest and take a test run with the Sims tool. But for now, the deal is NBA Treat, $4.95 for the lineup generator. Link in the chat or in the description of this video. Is it in the description of this video? It's probably not, is it? It is. Nice. Nice. Shout out Nathan Joyce or Jordan if you did it while we were talking.
I'm sure it wasn't Jordan.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect Jordan to be doing anything of value. Ever. Really?
Probably still just sitting there wishing I didn't have my shirt on still.
Probably. That would make the most sense to me. Game 4. Indiana Pacers. 11.5-point dogs in Boston. 231 total. We do have some questionable tags here for Indiana. Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, and Jalen Smith, all with a Q tag here. This one is going to be pretty ugly. If they're at full strength, I don't think you're really getting to anything from the Pacers unless like Miles Turner just shows up in a lineup or Tyrese Halliburton shows up in a lineup. But there are no priorities here. If Tyrese Halliburton gets ruled out, we start finding some value.
Yeah, and it starts turning into the really fun Indiana value where you just get to be wrong about which guy it is, whether it's Nesmith, Nembhard, Mathurin, whoever. But
you didn't even say McConnell.
What'd you say?
You didn't even say McConnell.
Yeah. So I mean, if he's in, there's, like you said, there's nothing. 9,400 Halliburton, obviously really high ceiling. There's a lot of guys like him. It's kind of comparable to like Dame that we talked about in the first or second game. But yeah, if he's out, it's going to open up stuff, whether that's Mathurin, Nembhard, Nesmith, whoever it may be. But assuming he's in, there's nothing really from Indiana.
But if Halliburton and Mathurin somehow sit, then we're going to be freeing out 60 minutes for some of these guys. We're going to create a lot of value. We're also going to see an Indiana Pacers team that's 2 touchdown underdogs to Boston.
Yeah, that too.
So like, even when we get this value, it is going to be, you're going to have to like gulp it down a bit. It's not going to be good. It's going to happen, but it's not going to be fun. This is a terrible spot.
Right. And I was trying to think, like, is there any, like, if those guys were both out, is there anybody that we would expect to get more production over the course of a competitive game that also would just be out there in garbage time? And like, I don't know, maybe Nembhard.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know.
I don't know that there's like a great answer to that one.
Jalen Smith, but like, you're not playing him before that. So
right.
Toppin, I don't know. Are they ever going to play him more than 22 minutes? Dude probably feels like he's still on the Knicks.
Right. And like, he shouldn't be impacted really by Mathurin and Halliburton too much.
No, you would think. It's just really ugly. Like, you're not going to ever, we're basically never going to want people against Boston.
No.
And then we get to, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, maybe you could make the case Toppin looks a little bit safer just because you're going to need Nesmith playing minutes at other positions, but
yeah,
still, like, he already wasn't the straight backup to Toppin last game like he was 2 games ago. And I assume you're going to have McConnell in the rotation taking some of those minutes. Like,
yeah,
I don't think there's going to be a clear-cut answer, but there's enough cheap guys where, like, something's going to look nice. It is nice that, like, Nembhard's already 5,100, Nesmith's 5,400. This would be a lot more annoying team if Halliburton gets ruled out, if you were just talking about like $3,800 guys and knowing that you're going to need one and you have no idea which one.
Yeah. On the Boston side, we actually got Drew to 11% ownership on DK, 6,800.
Sorry, one other thing I just wanted to mention in that conversation.
Go for
it. Don't forget last year, Nembhard, wildly different player without Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah. As long as TJ McConnell's not on the floor.
Right. Yeah. That was the other piece. Yeah. That's when Halliburton's not on the floor, obviously Nembhard gets better, but he still, when he's playing with McConnell, still just doesn't do anything. But if he's out there without McConnell and without Halliburton, he is a totally different player.
Single-digit exposure to everybody from Boston except for Drew Holiday. Holiday gets to 10. I kind of like Porzingis for 8,200 power forward center, given the ownership. But this is just another spot where I don't know how you pick between Brown, Tatum, Holiday, and KP. And this game is the most likely game to be not competitive in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, the price tag on Drew is nice at 6,800. I still like Jaylen Brown as a contrarian play at 5% owned, shooting guard, small forward, 7,700. Like, that's a relatively cheap price tag for Brown. You're just going to get those games where he blows up like he did against Washington. So it's interesting, as a low-owned contrarian guy, but there's still going to be a lot of those types of plays on this slate that look very similar.
And Boston's going to be one of those teams where their blowouts are going to be driven by defense a little bit too. Their offense doesn't have to have outlier performances. They could just clamp somebody and they score 85 points, and then their blowout doesn't necessarily have to be crazy.
Right. Like, you look at that game against Washington where Jaylen Brown had like 58 DraftKings points. He had a really good offensive game and went nuts. That game's a blowout, even if he has like a pretty good offensive game. Like, he could have given you 48 DraftKings points, been fine, but nothing, essential. And Boston still just destroys them.
Yeah. Tough game to really want to break down. Pay attention to that news for later on today. Oh, here we go again. Brooklyn Nets. They are 6-point dogs in Miami, 222 total. For Brooklyn, Nick Claxton out. Spencer Dinwiddie, doubtful. Cam Thomas, out. Dennis Smith Jr., doubtful. These dudes are running out of bodies. For Brooklyn, 30% ownership coming into a $6,800 Ben Simmons point guard small forward. So I think we're doing the Ben Simmons thing today. 13% ownership coming into Cam Thomas, $6,600 point guard shooting guard. 27% ownership coming into a $4,800 shooting guard small forward. Thought we were going to get value here. Lonnie Walker. Walker came in for Spencer Dinwiddie after the injury in the second half of their last game. There's going to be a bunch here to like. Let's start at the top with the two most owned guys. How do you feel about Ben Simmons?
I think he looks good. Point guard, small forward, again, just always really valuable. 6,800, 30% chance of being optimal, 30% projected ownership, nearly a 41 DraftKings point projection at 6,800. So looks like a good option to me. He's showing up in like half of my lineups right now, which again, take that with a grain of salt. It's 10:30 in the morning, but he's showing up a lot for me right now. It looks like a really useful piece.
Yeah. The flexibility really helps. And they're running low on options.
Yeah, more playmaking available for him now.
Yeah, that's a big one. I would imagine the assist rate has to jump in a massive way for this particular setup.
Yeah, I mean, look who he's playing with now. Like Dinwiddie isn't your highest usage guy, but he's he's relatively high usage, but he's not Cam Thomas. He's not Mikal Bridges. Cam Thomas is not the guy taking over facilitating. That's not really Lonnie Walker's thing. It's not really Mikal Bridges. Like, no. It should just be Point Simmons here.
Yep. How do you want to handle Lonnie Walker? Assuming he starts shooting guard, small forward, 4,800, this seems just like a no doubt about it value option with a great MPE.
Yeah, shooting guard, small forward, going a little bit over owned, but nothing too concerning. He's in 50% of the lineups that I just built. Yeah, looks like a good value. I mean, he's at a price point where like he's not safe. He can obviously disappoint, but the minutes should be there, and there should still be enough scoring opportunities for him. You know, you have Thomas and Bridges as the clear 1 and 2, whichever order you want to put that in. But it's not like Simmons is a high usage guy. There should be shots available for Walker. O'Neal's not somebody that's going to step into a lot more shots. Dorian Finney-Smith isn't going to step into a lot more shots.
Mustafa, I got to point this out. He said TJ McConnell, if Halliburton's out, massive blowout. McConnell gets fourth quarter run. Do not play a 13-game slate hoping that you're going to get blowout run out of TJ McConnell in the fourth quarter against Boston. It's also still not going to go well.
Yeah, and to that point, so like that's kind of what I had brought up just to kind of try and think about. Like, is there anybody that would benefit from Halliburton / Mathurin being out that would also just be guaranteed blowout run? I don't think the 34-year-old backup point guard is guaranteed blowout run.
No, not at all.
I don't actually know if he's 34, but it feels like he is. Like TJ McConnell's not at the top of the list of guys that I would expect them to be throwing out there down 35 in the fourth.
Nope. No. Even if they did.
I'm pretty sure you tell him to get off the bench at that point, and he's just like hitting the coach and walking back to the locker room.
Even if they did put him out there for all of that run, that's not what I'm looking for on this game and this slate.
Well, no, but the point being, if he's just getting the minutes during the first 3 quarters, and then also is blowout proof, that's nice.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's blowout proof.
I also don't know if he's the guy that gets the minutes in the first 3 quarters either.
No, but just for the sake of this hypothetical, he's not blowout proof.
Yes. Agree. 100% agree. All right. Cam Thomas, 6,600 point guard, shooting guard, 13% owned. That feels low. I would have expected that to be a little bit higher given what's going on here. Like, he's going to let it rip.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising. It's another one, like, you compare him to Shadon Sharp. He's $600 more. He doesn't have the same positional flexibility, but he's getting a third of the ownership. So it's kind of interesting. He is not one of the Brooklyn guys that I'm getting a lot of. I only have like 8% right now. There is one Brooklyn guy just breaking everything I'm doing right now.
Royce?
No.
It's not going to be Bridges based on the way that you're saying that. And I think I'm out of dudes.
Watford.
Dorian Finney-Smith? Trendon Watford. Okay. So 3K, we don't even know if he plays.
We have him projected for 17.5 DraftKings points at 2% owned at 3K. So
yeah,
like that's something in there is going to change by the time we get the lock, whether his projection comes down, his ownership comes up. One of those two things is going to happen. But right now, it's just we're not projecting him for ownership, and we are projecting him to play enough minutes that he's useful. So that is one thing that, like I said, when I said before, I was a little surprised at how condensed my stuff is. It makes a lot more sense when you keep in mind that everything I just ran is basically just saying like, oh, if you play Trendon Watford, you can just play the highest projected guys everywhere else.
Yeah. Like, I doubt he I think we're going to have a real hard time even seeing him as a play heading into lock.
Right. Yeah. So I'm kind of, again, always taking everything I do at 10 in the morning with a grain of salt, but he is definitely just screwing up everything I'm doing.
Yeah. Like, I don't like, I think he plays because they're just running out of bodies. Day'Ron Sharpe might get a couple extra minutes, and then you get less of Watford. I think one of like Armani Brooks or Jalen Wilson both have to play. I don't think any of that really matters. I think the real focus is Simmons, Thomas, Walker, and then, Mikal Bridges, obviously at 8,100 without Dinwiddie there too. Like, he's going to treat it like it's his team. See where it goes.
So I guess I'm having trouble. Like, what am I missing? Why? Like, you look at the second half last game, Dinwiddie was out. Dennis Smith Jr. only played like 5 minutes. So him being out isn't a huge factor. Johnston was already out. Watford didn't leave the bench. Like, why would he be getting minutes?
There's a lot of minutes left over after you project the dudes that are real. Like, if I just sum up all of the minutes and include 10 for Day'Ron Sharpe, if I include O'Neal, Bridges, Walker, Smith, Sharpe, Thomas, Simmons, I still have 34 minutes to fill out for this team for Watford, Jalen Wilson, or Armani Brooks. They're just out of bodies.
I don't understand how, though, because they played the second half without any of those guys.
I have 30 minutes to everybody I mentioned except for Day'Ron Sharpe, who I have at 10.
And like
31 O'Neal, 36 Bridges, 31 Walker, 31 Smith, 35 Thomas, 32 Simmons. There's at least like 20 minutes left over for today, and we have no idea which person gets them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I guess like they did play the main guys more in the second half last game than they will today. But
yeah.
So point being here, I'm getting a lot of trend in Watford. I don't think that's going to be the case. I wouldn't expect it to be.
Neither would I. Unless he gets named a starter somehow.
Right.
Which I would not see coming.
That would happen.
No. On the opposite side for the Miami Heat, probable tag on Bam, Q tag on Jimmy Butler and Haywood Highsmith. Caleb Martin's still out. Josh Richardson, Duncan Robinson, Kevin Love, all available. 9% ownership coming into $4,300 Kevin Love right now. I think the best play for Miami is pretty easily Tyler Hero, 7,500. The only thing that we could really hope for is Jimmy Butler being out to create a little bit more value. But if I'm getting anywhere here, I think Hero's the first guy.
I'm getting a ton of Kevin Love, getting a ton of Tyler Hero. We have Love right now with a 20% chance of being optimal at 9% owned. We have him with a 25-point projection. Maybe that comes down. Maybe the ownership comes up. But this is just another one where right now there's such a big gap in how we have him projected and how we have him expected to be owned that he's showing up a ton for me. But those numbers do generally close as the day goes on, just as a function of the field not being stupid. Usually
there's so much information that we don't have yet that is going to stabilize ownership. There's no
and usually early in the day, if you get something where there's just like a huge disconnect between ownership and the way that we have somebody projected, one of those numbers is moving so that they're closer together, because you're just very rarely in 2023 NBA DFS going to get a spot where it's just like, oh yeah, the field is completely whiffing on this guy and we can just plug him into our lineups. Like, you just don't really get that anymore. So chances are
in NBA.
What'd you say?
Not in the NBA.
Right. You're just either going to get that ownership coming up or the projection coming down. But if we were to start with this information right now, he would look great. I'm with you on Tyler Hero, though. 7,500 price tag is nice. Should play a lot of minutes, only getting 7% ownership right now. We have him also projected to be about twice as half as popular as he should be.
Okay. If Butler ends up out, does that open anything new up for you that immediately jumps out other than just liking Tyler Hero more?
So I think just liking Hero more mostly.
Yeah. I don't know if they're ready to just let Josh Richardson have a lot of minutes. Like, he could be interesting if we knew that he could play 30. I just don't know if he can.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Bam looks better if Butler is out also.
I got nothing else for Miami.
Me neither, other than they did give Richardson the final 13 and a half minutes of their last game. That's just something that I always find kind of interesting when you are having the conversation about somebody like we were, how many minutes can he play right now? Will they let him play right now if Butler were to be out? The fact that they just ran him 13 minutes straight makes me think that they're not being overly cautious with him.
I mean, I expect him to close moving forward.
Yeah.
In the Love spot.
Yeah, agreed.
When they're at full strength, obviously. We are not going to talk about this next game other than just giving you the details on it. Cleveland Cavaliers are 6.5-point dogs in New York, 211 total. That's the lowest total on the slate. So that's disgusting right out of the gate. These two teams played each other yesterday. It's a double back-to-back. We have no idea what the status of Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, insert random Knicks here too as well if they're sitting anybody on a back-to-back. There is nothing that we can talk about right now. We need injury reports for this game.
Yep, completely agreed.
So pay attention to it later today. But as of this particular moment, this team is impossible to talk about. Yeah, I can tell you this much. Max Strus is not going to be uber chalk today.
Yeah, I'll say like with everybody projected in just for the sake of getting lineups done early, I wasn't getting to this game. Obviously, when you start ruling guys out, that can change.
Yeah. If for some reason we get everybody in, this game is a tire fire of no DFS interest whatsoever.
Yep.
211 total. No thanks.
Yeah, I mean, like right now in our boom bust tool, we have the highest optimal percentage from this game being Julius Randle at 8%, and the highest ownership being Julius Randle at 6%.
Gross. But we will cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, it's not worth it. Tune into the deeper dive. One more. New Orleans Pelicans. This is a fun game to watch. 3.5-point dogs in OKC, 225 total. We don't yet know the status of Brandon Ingram. He is questionable. No Alvarado, Najee Marshall, or Trey Murphy. Hopefully BI is in just because I think that's a more fun way to watch this game with a lot of young talent. Like, this is a cool game to tune into. 12% ownership coming into CJ, 8 to Brandon Ingram, basically to nobody else. I don't have any issues with either of those things, although I think Ingram is a much better play than CJ McCollum if they're both in. What do you see for the Pels?
I'm going to do a lot of McCollum, even with Ingram projected in, which I don't love, but I don't hate it either. 12% ownership is reasonable. We have him with a 16% chance of being optimal. I have about 30% right now, which is quite a bit more than the field. He's in that same price range as DeJounte Murray, so it seems like that's just like a useful guard price for me. But yeah, happy to get to McCollum where I can. Certainly like him more if Ingram's out.
Yeah, shooting guard, small forward, 8K for Ingram. I'd be more likely to get there than the CJ side. I have no interest in Zion, that's for sure.
We have them both projected for 40 DraftKings points, and McCollum's $800 less expensive.
Yeah, I have a slightly bigger gap in projections right now.
Yeah. I would expect that by the time we get to lock, we probably will too.
Yeah. I have zero interest in Zion on DraftKings.
That's a really, really high price tag.
For a guy that's going to play 30 minutes. Like, it's no thanks. Joe Val, add him to the list of centers for sure. Herb Jones, 5K is like, he plays, I guess.
Zion did lose about 4.5 minutes to garbage time last game and played 30.
Yeah. Yeah. Do I think that he can? I mean, he played 32 in the opener. Like, do I think his ceiling is 34 minutes? Yeah, I do. But I don't think he's the guy that we can project like at that mark constantly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he was 28. The game before that, 28, lost 3. Like, I think projecting 31, 32 for him makes sense.
Agreed. It's just he's not going to be a guy that looks good at all for this kind of slate. OKC is at full strength for what we've had for the entire season. And they're also unowned. 3% to Jalen Williams or Josh Giddey are the high marks. I wouldn't mind Williams, Giddey, Dort, SGA, even Chet at 6,700 could be interesting. You cannot prioritize a guy from Oklahoma City today.
No, Giddey's the one showing up for me like 15 to 20% of the time. $6,900 price tag. So again, in that price range at guard, triple double upside. We have him projected to go a bit under-owned, 8% chance of being optimal, 3% ownership. So he's showing up right now, but also doesn't strike me as somebody that I'm like confident will be showing up for me later. You're not looking at it saying like, oh, this is one of the best plays on the slate. It's just, yeah, this guy's going a little bit under-owned. He fits nicely in the lineups. I like, what he does from a fantasy standpoint. Price tag's reasonable, all of that. It's really tough to get to SGA at 10-4. Never going to be mad that you do, but really tough to get there. Tough to get to Dort, Jalen Williams. I think if I get to OKC, I would expect it to be Giddey.
Okay. I have nothing else here for the Thunder.
Same.
I do have something for Bet365. They are the sponsor of this show. One, they highly recommend you guys hit the like button if you're here. That really helps them. But two, if you want to get some additional cash, if you are in one of the following states, this is going to be for you. If you live in Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, or Colorado. Bet $5 after clicking the link in the description. You're going to get $150 win or lose from Bet365. Don't sleep on this free cash, guys. We've got plenty of picks at Odds Shopper, in our premium Discord, on the Odds Shopper YouTube channel. We can help you out for this one, but you can start off a bankroll at Bet365 with $150. That's a pretty good way to do it. All you have to do is bet 5. Got to be 21 or over, 18 or over in Kentucky. Congrats for that one. If you have a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. We keep it moving. Charlotte Hornets, 2-point dogs in Houston, 223 total. If you thought Portland and Detroit was interesting, this is basically the same game. Two of the worst teams in the league battling it out in disgusting fashion. 13% ownership coming into PJ Washington, 9 to Terry Rozier. I think both of those guys are fine. Mark Williams is fine. There are not priorities for Charlotte.
Yeah, nothing really standing out for me right now. PJ Washington, Terry Rozier, I think the two guys I'd be most likely to get to. Rozier is another guard in that 7K range, but he does only have shooting guard eligibility on DraftKings, so not as flexible as those other guys that I was getting to. There's a lot of forwards in this 5 to 6K range, like PJ Washington, that look perfectly fine. He happens to be getting the ownership, so I would probably look elsewhere first just for that reason in a lot of lineups, but I think those guys look okay. Nothing that stands out, though.
Can't play LaMelo, correct?
I think it's really tough at that price.
Yeah, same. Brandon Miller's been seeing a bunch of minutes over these past 2 games, 33 and 36 in his last 2. $5,400 small forward, power forward. Just hard to want to go to that off the bench.
Yeah. No ownership is nice, but
that's about it.
Yeah.
Houston side, we got some ownership coming in here. Now, for Houston, still no Tari Eason, and surprisingly, Victor Oladipo not going to make it to this one. 28% ownership coming into Jabari Smith Jr., 28% ownership coming into Jalen Green, 19% coming into Alperen Şengün. I do think these guys look pretty good. They might all be like a hair over owned for what this slate is, but I like the value of the Houston side because the matchup against Charlotte's usually pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not getting to these guys like the field is projected to right now, but again, that's just something that can very easily change over the course of the day, whether their ownership projection comes down or just the guys that I'm getting to right now that I don't think I'll be getting to later go away. But what I'm getting to aside, Şengün, Smith, Green, all look like good plays, all double-digit optimal percentages, relatively inexpensive. Şengün obviously gives you a very high ceiling at 7,700 at center. Smith's cheap at 5,500. Green's cheap at 6,100 at shooting guard. So good matchup. Those guys all look good. The only concern to me is, does the ownership hold where it is right now?
I think the most fascinating piece is this: 28% to Green, 28 to Smith, 19 to Şengün. Why is Dillon Brooks 4?
Probably because he's Dillon Brooks, but I do understand your point. Like 34 minutes last game, only 4,900, shooting guard and small forward eligible. He doesn't give you the same. I don't think he's nearly as likely to put up a big game as somebody like Smith or Green, but he's still 4,900, low owned, good positional eligibility, playing big minutes, thinks he can give you the same game as Jalen Green, which, is good for fantasy upside.
Especially in a matchup against Charlotte.
Right.
This is the type of day where if Dillon Brooks makes the first 3 that he takes, all bets are off for how much he starts heaving after that. He's going to have a couple games like that. Price tag being sub 5K is interesting. The fact that he's just playing 34 minutes a night over the past 2 games is also very appealing. He got 39 in the OT game on the 27th.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, he's more of a small slate play. If whatever turbo slate this game is on, he's probably going to actually look good, but he's certainly somebody that within individual lineups, if you're just I have these pretty popular guys, I need a 5K forward that also saves me ownership, roll the dice on Dillon Brooks. Don't watch the game and hope he finishes with 35 points.
I just think it's really interesting because of the ownership for Houston, Şengün 20, Smith 28, Green 28. I don't know why Dillon Brooks is disconnected from being a really nice point per dollar play here.
Yeah, it should certainly be a lot lower in terms of ownership than those guys because they're all so much better. But it's weird when you look at it in the sense the ownership's inflated on Şengün, Smith, and Green. So we're essentially projecting the field to realize that this is a good spot for Houston and kind of flock to these guys. So not that you should be expecting that same level of ownership for Brooks, but it's kind of weird that it's only at 4%, not at like 10%.
Yeah. Because he's a good point per dollar play, like full stop at that price tag.
I mean, we only have him projected like 4x.
I have it at significantly higher than that. 4x.
Yeah. Wait, what
do we have him projected for?
21.7.
In how many minutes?
That's what I'm not on that page. I was going to go look. I was on the Boom Bust page, which doesn't have minutes.
Interesting.
We have him at. I'm still on the wrong page.
I'm going to guess 33 since I think they're mine to start the day, but maybe they weren't.
I don't think they're yours based on Watford.
That's true. I only had 12.
We have him at 26 minutes.
26?
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Yeah, so that's why we have low ownership on Dillon Brooks and a low projection on Dillon Brooks right now.
Yep. Figured it out. Because he's not playing, like, that's not the minutes projection for Dillon Brooks today.
Nope.
So, yeah, I have him at 27 fantasy points, 5.6x, 0.83 fantasy points per minute. Even if you want to say that's a little bit high, decent point per dollar play. Right. Keep an eye on it. Another fun game to watch here. Denver Nuggets, 3.5-point favorites in Minnesota, 223 total. Nugs are at full strength. We know what these guys are. There's no ambiguity in their rotation. We know who plays. 7% ownership to Jamal Murray is the high mark. I don't mind if I get a single starter from Denver. None of them are priorities.
Yeah, like paying up for Jokic is obviously nice, but on larger slates, it becomes in some ways more difficult. Like on larger slates, you have more opportunities to just get a bunch of value that opens up, and then just paying up is easy. But the opportunity cost goes up as well. So like right now, while we're waiting on injury news in a lot of places, we don't have confirmed value yet. It's just relatively difficult to get to Jokic at 12K. When you can, great. Right now he's 1% owned. As value opens up, that ownership number will come up. Jamal Murray at 7,800 looks fine, getting 7% ownership. I've already sort of said it that right now I'm prioritizing DeJounte Murray, Ben Simmons, Tyler Hero, CJ McCollum in that guard range, but Murray looks perfectly fine as well.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add for Denver. 12K for Jokic. We're going to have the value to get there, that's for sure.
Right. Like he's somebody that's just going to look better when we get to the deeper dive, because we're going to be able to say, these guys are out, these players are cheap. That's how you get to Jokic. Right now, we essentially have all the questionable guys projected in. So it's not a realistic view of what this slate is going to look like.
On the Minnesota end, Jaden McDaniels is probable. Shake Milton is probable. So we should be getting the normal full strength Minnesota Timberwolves. 8% ownership to Naz Reid at 4,800 is the high mark. I think that just evaporates when value starts to come in. I don't find that much interesting for Minnesota. I don't mind like a 5K Conley, but again, there are no priorities here.
Yeah, I got nothing. Just a little bit of talent showing up basically, which perfectly fine with. But yeah, it's just another team I think where Gobert, Conley, Towns, Edwards, any of these guys, if they're in a lineup and you're looking at it, you shouldn't like redo your lineup or anything. They clearly have the ability to be very good plays at low ownership, but that's what they are. I don't think that they stand out as in terms of like, oh, these are the guys going the most on their own. Let me play a lot of them, but they're perfectly fine pieces for, I have 6 guys in my lineup pulling 20 whatever percent ownership. And now I need somebody that can give me a really good game and isn't popular. Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, like they all fit that.
Yep. Wild slate, dude. The fact that there are 7 games that lock by 7:30 and then another 2 more at 8 is going to be like a real, you're not leaving the computer till much later tonight.
Yeah.
The 6:30 to 7 run, the 7 to 7:30 and the 7:30 to 8 are going to be a lot of work. Fun stuff, though. That's how you win the monies. Chicago Bulls, 5-point dogs in Dallas, 225 total. On the Bulls side, Zach LaVine is probable. That's the only thing that matters. And they're not getting any ownership. 5% to LaVine, 5% to Vooch. Basically, everything that you just said about Chicago is probably the same for Minnesota. Like, if Zach LaVine or Vooch or DeMar DeRozan are the last guy you want to put in, by all means, but you're not building your lineup out of Bulls.
Yeah, exactly. You're never going to be upset about any of those guys. 7,200 on Vooch is probably the most favorable price tag, but he's also center only. So the opportunity cost is there. But yeah, Levine shooting guard, small forward is nice. 7,600 is a reasonable price tag for the ceiling he gives you. I probably would rather get to Jaylen Brown at that price, but very comparable plays, I think, 4 to 5% owned on teams where they're not going to carry the offense every single day, but there's going to be days that they do. So yeah, it's just another team where on shorter slates, they'd be really interesting just because of the talent that they have from an offensive standpoint. But on a slate like this, you don't have injuries, you have correct pricing. They're just a bunch of 5% on guys.
And then we go to Dallas. For the Mavs, Kyrie is questionable. That is a piece of information that is highly valuable because if Kyrie is out, even at 12-6, we're going to jam the shit out of Luka Doncic tonight, I think. Otherwise, if Kyrie is in, I'm probably not playing anything from Dallas.
Right. If Kyrie is in, it's just a more expensive Jokic, basically, where, yeah, I would love to find a way to get to Luka, but it's probably not going to happen. 12-6. Same goes really for Kyrie at 9,500, another like LaMelo Ball where Damian Lillard, where like, yeah, if he has a big game, it's Kyrie Irving. It's going to happen, but you can't play enough lineups where that's something you're prioritizing. So, as long as he's in, I don't think there's really anything here. If he's out, Luka looks better and it does start opening up. You could at least roll the dice on guys like Josh Green, Tim Hardaway, Grant Williams, if you wanted to, but assuming he's in, I don't really think there is anything from Dallas. Also, somebody in chat said no Kobe White. I don't know if he meant he's not playing Kobe White, which is perfectly reasonable, but Kobe White is not on the injury report. So not sure if you meant there is no Kobe White, there is Kobe White.
Yeah. But you probably shouldn't play him either.
Right. Yeah. If you meant I'm just not playing Kobe White, then by all means.
Do you know what Luka is scoring over his 3 games on a per minute basis on DraftKings?
I do not.
2.03.
That's like other than a lot.
Yeah. Fantastic. Bug boy. I don't think that the Bulls need to showcase Zach LaVine for the Sixers. I'm pretty sure they know what he does. Just guessing, though.
That's always my favorite, like going into the trade deadline. It's like, oh, they're going to showcase him because they want to trade him. Like teams don't
maybe
have
Patrick Williams, like
and
they start giving him 34.
Yeah, and especially somebody like LaVine. Like dude's been in the league for a while. He kind of does the same things he's done the entire time he's been in the league.
Yeah, they know it. I don't think Morey has any interest in Zach LaVine.
He may or may not, but like if he's not interested in him today, there's nothing Zach LaVine's going to do that makes him interested in him in 2 weeks.
Nope, not at all. Morey's not going to be like, this Levine kid on the Bulls is interesting. We should fucking take a look at him.
He doesn't make trades like DFS players in chat where he's shooting 80% from 3 over the last 2 weeks. He's a great play now.
Yeah, that's just not. Isn't that the guy from Maroon 5? Like that? Those aren't the conversations Daryl Morey's having. I know this because he follows Adam and I on Twitter, and we talk to him all the time. Anything else for Dallas?
No.
All right. 2 final things to touch on. Schedule for the rest of the day. This is pretty simple. NBA Deeper Dive coming up at 4:45. Adam and I will have way more information for that show than we do right now. All of the injury reports and things will be in. We will have actual actionable information. Tune in at 4:45. Not too much going on after that. NBA Live Before Lock at 6 p.m. That is it for live shows today, guys. It is basketball only on Wednesdays. Don't miss it. And if you're here every day, 1, hit the like button. Got to help us out. Run that number up. 2, go to stokastic.com/avatar. Use our stuff, guys. Free, completely free. Put the avatar on DraftKings or FanDuel. If you finish top 3 in a contest of 5,000 or more, tweet that win at Stokastic HOF. You're going to get yourself a free month of any Stokastic package that you want. That's up to a $200 value. This costs you $0. Absolutely nothing. Zilch. It won't change your day at all. But by the end of the day, it could change you in a big way. You can have a Stokastic package for a month. So take advantage. Stokastic.com/avatar. 3 games to go. Not too much that we need to really touch on here. That's an interesting ownership projection. Memphis Grizzlies. 3-point dogs in Utah, 227 total. Same normal injuries for Memphis right now. No Adams, Aldama, Clark, Morant, or Derrick Rose is out. And we did get Luke Kennard back. 21% ownership coming into Marcus Smart at 6,500. I'm going to assume that goes away by the end of the day. I like Bane at 8,500. I don't think that's going to be all that surprising. I don't know why he's only shooting guard eligible. That's annoying. If I were going to anybody for Memphis, I think it ends up being Bane. Little surprised to see Marcus Smart getting that much love.
Smart's the one I'm getting to the most right now, but again, that could just very easily disappear. I'm getting around 18%, 6,500 point guard, shooting guard. He's just sort of there, but he does project to go a little bit over owned. I don't have any problem with Bane. I think he's pretty difficult to get to at 8,500, but 10% ownership I think is reasonable. I'm in that same ballpark if the slate started right now. Outside of that, though, nothing from Memphis really showing up.
I think that Smart comes down to, teams something,
Agreed.
and it'll look a little bit more normal.
Yeah, Smart's just one of those guys, like the way he looks right now, like I said, I'm getting like 18% in the crunch I ran. When we get, if, obviously things are going to look way different anyway, but like I could have 5%, I could have 25%, and neither would really be surprising.
Like Rose being out doesn't really affect Marcus Smart.
Right.
And if Kennard is back, like that's not that Kennard is like a usage guy, but that's a 1-to-1 swap at this point. Nothing else for Memphis. We go to Utah. Lots of ownership coming into Utah. No injuries to speak of. 15% ownership to a $5,500 John Collins. 18% ownership to a $5,600 Jordan Clarkson. 21% ownership to a $4,900 THT. I like the first two names.
I'm getting a lot of Collins, and that is it. I don't have any issue with Clarkson. I don't have any issue with Horton Tucker, given their respective salaries, but quite a bit of ownership. We have them both going a bit over owned here. Clarkson, 9% chance of being optimal. Horton Tucker, 7%. Both guys only have one position that they can be used at. So neither of them are showing up for me, really. John Collins, on the other hand, 5,500 power forward center, 15% owned, 19% chance of being optimal. He's showing up like 45% for me right now. Again, the number isn't relevant really, but the fact that he is showing up a lot, I think makes sense. 34 minutes last game, reasonably productive fantasy player throughout his career, cheap price tag, not that much ownership, just, fits in the lineups easily and allows you to get some other high upside guys elsewhere.
I really hope that I don't do I hope that by the time we get to closer to lock, that all of the value that comes out just gets me away from anybody like Talen Horton Tucker. It's just not an experience that I want to cheer for tonight. But who knows? It's not like I care. Clarkson is interesting. I didn't expect him to have a ton of ownership. He's been pretty bad to start the season, but 5,600 for him, I don't mind that price. But I think Collins is the guy I want the most.
Clarkson's one of those, like at 5,600, the playing time's there, the player that he is. If he were getting like 5% ownership, I would think he's really interesting because he's Jordan Clarkson playing 30 plus minutes at 5,600. It's really just a function of ownership right now, where if 20% of the field is going to say like, hey, we know Jordan Clarkson's playing a bunch of minutes and he's good at scoring, then it's pretty easy to just be like, okay, well, hopefully this is just another game where Jordan Clarkson doesn't score efficiently.
Jalen Duren not seen participating in shoot around on Wednesday. Marvin Bagley wearing the first unit practice jersey.
All right, well, there's a value piece.
Yep. There's a value piece for sure. 2 to go here. Sacramento Kings. People are going to think this one's a good thing, and it's not. We just had Bryant Phillips saying, load up on sack players today. Boy, are you going to be mistaken. They are 7-point dogs in Golden State, 233 total. No De'Aaron Fox, going to be out for a little bit. Trey Lyles still out. Highest owned guy on the Sacramento Kings, 9%. Even moving Davion Mitchell into the starting lineup, this team looks awful today. The only guy that I think that I would want to really get to is $5,100 Kevin Huerter. Like Sabonis isn't better in this scenario. We've had this conversation before. Sacramento looks bad today.
They do. And one of the big things, everything comes back to pricing. There's that tendency to be like, oh, Davion Mitchell is going to be a good value because now he's starting in place of Fox. He's $4,800. And he's still Davion Mitchell, who's, like a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy. So, when you're getting him, like, Fox gets hurt last night and then they're playing a back-to-back and DraftKings can't adjust the price. Yeah, $3,700 Mitchell looks good. But when he's already nearly 5K, it just can't look that good because he's not the backup point guard that is just waiting for De'Aaron Fox to go to the bench so he can go out there and get up a bunch of shots and do a lot of stuff that's good for fantasy. That's not his game. That's not what he does. So doesn't get, some huge bump there other than playing time, but the minute or the salary rather adjusted for that. You could certainly see some extra volume for like Kevin Huerter, which, like you said, makes him kind of interesting. Maybe Malik Monk, but like he's already up to 5,700. Domantas Sabonis, there was a huge tendency last year to play him when Fox is out because that's normally sort of the like flow chart. Playmaker or scorer number one goes out. Sabonis is good at playmaking. He's good at scoring. He looks better. But the pick and roll between Fox and Sabonis is just so good and so important for that offense that it really didn't make an impact in per minute rates for Sabonis. He's already expensive at 10-5. It's a tough team to get to.
Yeah, I think they actually look the worst of any team.
I'm getting to Keegan. That's about it.
And I think that's fine. But like at 6,300, that's not like a great price for him.
Right. Yeah. I was surprised that I'm getting to him at that price tag. Like I saw the salary, I saw that he's getting the most ownership, and I was like, that's kind of weird. And then I looked and saw that I'm getting even more than the field. We have him projected to go under owned at 13% or 9% ownership, 13% chance of being optimal. So I get it, I guess, but it's still not a spot that I'm looking at it and really enamored with it.
Yeah. For the people in chat that are taking a look at Malik Monk, make sure you're taking a look at the price tag before you do that.
Right. That's the thing. Like the opportunities are there. Monk certainly fits the mold of guys that can put up big games without the Aaron Fox. You're just also paying a pretty nice premium for that already.
Yeah, you need 40. You're going to need 40 fantasy points plus out of Monk. I went back and looked through all of the games where De'Aaron Fox did not play last year and Monk did. He averaged 24 minutes. Like it's not like he fell into a giant load of playing time. Nothing really changed for him. It can. Like if you tell me that he goes out there and plays 30, like that's not going to surprise me, but I'm not hitching my wagon to that on a 13 gamer.
The nice thing about Monk, if you're like looking at this and just wanting to play Monk, is that generally if he plays well, they will find more minutes for him. If he doesn't play well, then yeah, you're screwed, but like you weren't getting fantasy points anyway because he's not playing well. He is sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy where if he's giving you a good fantasy performance, you're typically not going to be like, damn, Monk was really good, but he only got 22 minutes. Like if you're looking at your lineups and you have Monk and he's just accumulating points, he's probably staying on the floor.
Yeah. But that price is bad.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get to. Do you think there's any chance that like Duarte ends up stepping into a bigger role here?
I do. I gave him 22 minutes at 3,900. The problem is he's not great, but it's great positionality, great price. I think he can.
He's kind of the guy that I'm looking at, and I'm just like, yeah, there's no way to get there on a 13 gamer, but I'm fully aware that like at the end of the Kings game, it can just be like, man, I really wish I had just rolled the dice on Duarte.
He is somebody that I thought about for sure.
Like he has the skill set that they need for this.
Yeah. And he's malleable in that if you're moving people around, he can move up and down that positional spectrum.
Right.
He'll fit however they need to do it.
Right. Exactly. And like, it just goes back to Davion Mitchell's not a natural replacement for Fox in terms of what he provides.
Not quite
at all. So like, somebody like Duarte could certainly step into a bigger role. Probably just something to keep in mind more so if you're playing like the late slate or whatever slate this game is on.
On the opposite side here, Golden State Warriors, Jonathan Kuminga is questionable. Dario Saric and Klay Thompson both probable. So Kuminga is the only real question mark here. Highest owned guy on the Warriors is a tied at 1% for Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry. Probably not going to be getting to anything from Golden State. You want Curry, go for it. But otherwise, nope.
Yeah, nothing from Golden State really showing up for me. Good matchup, obviously. But Curry's 10K, scoring dependent for that salary. Not to say that he's purely a scoring dependent player, but most players in the 5K range are getting more peripherals than Curry. So that's always sort of an issue with him, but the ceiling's always there. That goes without saying. Nobody's getting more than 1% ownership. Nobody has more than a 2.5% chance of being optimal. There's nothing that looks particularly good from Golden State.
No, I don't really see it. This is going to be a real tough spot for Sacramento.
Yes.
And then we close it out. Final game of the night. And we're really not going to talk about this one with any sort of volume. The the LA Clippers, are taking on the Los Angeles Lakers. I got to make sure I get that right. Clippers, 5-point dogs in LA, 225 total. Clippers are on a back-to-back. We have no idea who's playing here. Can't talk about it. It's possible that the value for the Clippers is insane today. And we might not know any of this until 4:00. We might not actually know any of it until way after lock. But as it stands right now, do you think they're playing? By the way, this game is on ESPN.
Yeah. We have George projected in, Kawhi projected out. I don't have any issue with that.
I put them both in. I don't care, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't think this trade is official yet either. So, like, I don't think we're seeing any of that today.
Right. So I was going to say the one thing that I think we can count on is that, like, Bones Highland is going to have a bigger role here than normal, even if everybody is in.
Yeah.
Norm Powell, bigger role than normal, even if everybody is in. And then if you start taking guys out, like you said, you just start potentially getting a ton of Clippers value.
The best the thing to keep in mind scenario is the same as yesterday. And I think it's probably worse than that.
Right. But the thing to keep in mind is that, too, is so like somebody like Bones Highland, right? Played 32 minutes yesterday. Even if everybody's in for the Clippers today, Highland is probably in the same role, assuming he stays in the starting lineup. But if you take out somebody like Kawhi or George or both, it's not going to have you're not going to like start going a lot higher than 32 minutes on Bones necessarily, but you need to be increasing that usage rate because he is shooting a lot once those guys leave the floor. Like, this is somebody, it's the opposite of Davion Mitchell, right? Where the minutes are there, but if he's playing next to Leonard and George, that's really just going to impact his shot volume. If you take those guys away, he's looking for his shot. It's not creating a situation where the Clippers then don't have anybody that is going to look for their shot because Bones Highland is going to just do it himself. And Powell to a lesser extent also.
By the way, $5,100 Bones Highland is going to look better than Malik Monk today.
Yep.
Yeah, we can't, there's nothing to talk about for this one until we get more news because everything changes. So we're going to go ahead and skip the rest of the Clippers and finish up with the Lakers.
15% usage rate last night.
Who did?
Kawhi.
Of course he did. Of course he did. On the opposite side of this one, no Rui. He's doubtful as of right now. The rest of the people that are relevant aren't. Cam Reddish is probable. 24% ownership coming into D'Angelo Russell at 6,100. I think he looks really good here. 14% coming into AD at 9,800. I also think AD looks really good here. Probably don't want too much else from the Lakers.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of D'Angelo Russell. I think I sort of alluded to that earlier. 6,100 is just a really good price tag for the minutes that he's playing. Christian Wood off the bench was showing up for me a bit. He's not getting any ownership. He's 5,200. He's another one that I think I probably, once, ownership and projections sort of level out, I start to lose him. But 5,200 for somebody that produces like him isn't the end of the world. He did close last game alongside Prince, Russell, Davis, and LeBron. So kind of interesting in tournaments, if the ownership stays down. But Russell, Davis, I think the two most interesting pieces. And Russell for me is the most interesting piece.
I have nothing else to add. 13 games took us a little bit. 750 people in the house, only 100 and change likes. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done it yet. Sign up, NBA Treat, if you want the NBA lineup generator. Bet 365, bet 5 to get 150 in a select amount of states. Adam, what have you got going on for the rest of the day other than you and I doing the deeper dive at 4:45?
I'll have a new article out soon-ish, just breaking down the higher priced guys on the slate, how they look relative to each other. And then I will also have out the lineup generator video after that. That'll be on my Twitter and on YouTube. And then I'll be back with you for the deeper dive.
There it is, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Jordan Klein for producing. Remember, deeper dive is essential. We need a ton of information and we will break it all down for you at 4:45. So come join us at that point in time. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Good luck, everybody. Peace.